everyone, and welcome to episode 21 of True Crime All the Time. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is Mike Gibson. Gibby, what is going on?
Hey, Mike. Doing good, man.
Are you?
Yeah. I can't believe it's 21 episodes.
I know, that's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah. That's just...
When you think about from Alton Coleman all the way up to 21 and how many downloads we're getting and how much interaction we're getting, it blows us. I know it blows us both away.
Oh, I can't. Yeah, 21 episodes.
It really is. And the interaction. That's the part that really...
I love it, man.
I know you do. People saying that you're a suspect with a K-bar.
Never know.
You know. But again, I know you get a kick out of it.
Yeah.
In 2016, California wife and mother Sherry Papini disappeared for 22 days. When she was found, she told authorities a detailed account of being kidnapped and tortured. Years later, in a stunning twist, Papini pled guilty to making false statements about what happened to her, setting off a media firestorm. Now, for the first time, Sherry Papini is telling her side of the story and revealing shocking new information. Sherry Papini, caught in a lie, an ID documentary event, Monday, May 26th at 9 on ID. Set your DVR. So we got to give some shout outs. We got a bunch of new Patreon supporters, which is awesome.
Love that.
So shout out to Jennifer Richard, Jordan, no last name, Jordan Lemons, which was one of our very first supporters. Yeah. Actually did our first hometown listener episode. We love Jordan. She's been with us.
Yeah, she's a good friend.
Yeah, been with us from the very beginning.
So Jennifer, Jordan, and Jordan.
Yep.
That's
Catherine
cool.
Clark.
Okay.
And Jeanette Craig.
And Jeanette. Wow, that's like 4 J's and a K.
How about that?
See?
But again, thank you so much to everybody. And
appreciate it.
As we always say, we appreciate not only our new Patreon supporters, but the people that keep supporting us. It really means so much to us. It's hard for me to even express how much it means. You know, as always, visit our website at truecrimeallthetime.com. Find all of our contact information. You know, follow us on our Facebook page, Twitter, Instagram. You'll find all that on there. Click on the merchandise tab. I got some new stickers that are coming. I got a lot of requests for stickers. And that's one thing I never thought about when I was placing orders for the newer website, which is stuff that I actually ordered, not the Zazzle, but the newer one.
Right. And
for some reason, stickers just never crossed my mind, but tons of people, I guess, like to get stickers for the different podcasts that they listen to.
Okay.
So I ordered a bunch of those. They should be up probably sometime next week. So look for those if you're one of those people that like stickers.
Yeah.
And a lot of people do.
Sounds like there's a lot of people that do.
Yep. And if you get one, take a picture of it, put it on Twitter, put it on Facebook. Yeah. We love that kind of stuff.
And whoever gets the first True Crime All the Time tattoo, I'll send you stickers for free.
Do not tell people to tattoo themselves. So if anybody wants to support us on Patreon, you can do that easily by going to patreon.com/truecrimeallthetime. And don't forget to check out our other podcast, True Crime All the Time Unsolved. At this very moment, there's a new episode dropping, which is on the tube sock killer.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, it's very fascinating. So after you listen to this episode, jump over, check out the tube sock killer on True Crime All the Time Unsolved. All right, Gibbs, you ready to get into this?
I'm ready.
It was a slow Saturday night, Nate.
All right, short clip, I know, but that is Jerome Brudos, Jerry. We're going to call him Jerry.
Jerry.
His mama named him Jerome, but I'm going to call him Jerry.
Right.
I would have loved to have found more, but found this little clip, and basically what it is, it's Jerome Jerry Brudos being interviewed by a reporter.
Yep.
And the reporter asks him, you know, about his murders. Basically, why did you do the things that you did, which is what we're going to get into. And Jerry says that it was a slow Saturday night.
Just a slow Saturday night.
And laughs
creepy,
like maniacal laugh.
Yeah.
Jerome Jerry Brudos was also known as what, Gibbs?
The Lust Killer.
The Lust Killer.
Yeah, and the Shoe Fetish Slayer.
I like that one. The Shoe Fetish Slayer, which I think is more.
Yeah, that's more of his calling. Well, don't you think?
Yeah, I think it's more descriptive of him.
Yes.
But again, we talk about it, right? Every serial killer has to have a nickname. I don't know why.
Yeah.
You know, we like to give people nicknames
Like
in this
Gibby.
country. Gibby.
Gibby.
So like we always like to do, let's start early life. And Jerry Brudos was born on January 31st, 1939 in Webster, South Dakota. He was the second son of Henry and Eileen, and he had an older brother whose name was Larry. Now, one thing, Gibbs, that I saw was it was mentioned that Jerry was an accidental birth.
Yeah, I've seen that.
And his parents, even with the accidental birth, I don't think they were trying to have him.
Right.
But when they found out that Eileen was pregnant, they really wanted a daughter.
Yeah.
And this would kind of shape some of what Jerry becomes.
Sure. Someone first didn't want you, and then when they did have you, they weren't happy with how you came out. Which is strange because his dad owned a huge farm, if I remember right?
Yeah.
So you would think back in those days, you'd want as many boys as you can.
1939 in South Dakota, you'd think you'd want some farm hands.
That's exactly right.
So that was pretty strange. But like we said, and I think a lot of it was his mother. She was very upset that she had a son and not a girl. And she was constantly belittling Jerry, abused him, just didn't treat him very well at all. And I think a lot of it stemmed from the fact that, again, she wasn't happy with how he came out, I guess. I don't know if that's the right term, but, you know, the family would move a number of times, mostly stayed in the Pacific Northwest. And at some point early, you know, in his childhood, they ended up settling in Salem, Oregon.
Jerome Brudos was born to a woman who really wanted a girl. Now, we always hear about families or fathers who say, I really want a boy. But to imagine a mother who says, I really want a girl. I don't want a boy.
How a boy and later a man is treated by his first relationship with a woman, his mother, is very important. If he felt that he was sort of abandoned by her and simultaneously that she almost had a lot of anger towards him for even having been born, there can definitely be a feeling of some type of backlash.
I think this one's important because what she touches on in the fact of how somebody, and let's say a man's first interaction with a female figure, who in this case is his mother,
Right.
has a big effect.
Sure.
On how this person treats women later in life.
I agree.
And you can go back, you can look at Ed Gein, you can look at a whole host of people.
Tommy Lynn Sells.
Yeah, so Tommy Lynn Sells, right? That was a recent episode.
Right.
Just another case. So one thing about Jerry is, and it's central, you know, to this whole episode, he becomes fascinated with women's high-heeled shoes from a very early age.
Very early.
You know, at one point, he found a pair of high-heeled shoes in a junkyard while he was walking, and he put them on and he wore them home. And that didn't go over well with his mom.
That's a weird thing for a kid to find at a junkyard. And for a boy, I would think, to find a high-heeled pair of shoes, and that's what he wanted to keep. I find it strange.
Well, yeah. So his mom scolded him. You know, I don't know if she beat him, but she was on him big time about wearing these shoes. And she went to the point of even burning them in front of him.
That's a little extreme.
5-year-old Jerome Brudos. He finds this pair of women's shoes. Something had made him pick those up rather than looking for a dump truck or a toy tractor to play with. So he brings home this pair of women's shoes and he begins to wear them around the house.
The shoes became taboo, and her reaction to the shoes, he didn't understand why she was so adamant that he shouldn't have those. You know, and she berated him emotionally. So he kept those shoes. She was really out of control, burning the shoes in front of him.
In his case, he gets this message from his mom of very strong disapproval, that this is wrong, that this is nasty, it's dirty, and he's not to be doing it.
That fueled the flame of his anger to the point where that's probably when he really started feeling powerless and vulnerable. And that, combined with anger and frustration, can lead to a path of destruction later on down the line.
He started to associate that sexual arousal with that aggressiveness, with the forbidden aspect of the shoes, and that blossomed into this very strong fetish.
To me, that's fascinating because we're really getting in to the crux of how he starts to go down the path that he does.
Sure.
And again, we're talking very young,
Yeah.
right? 5, 6
Yeah.
years old.
Right. I mean, what is that? Kindergarten, first grade?
Yeah. So at this early age, he's starting to put violence and arousal together, getting aroused by the violence. And that's going to show up, in the case as we move along.
Yeah.
So like we said, Gibbs, we're talking first grade, and he steals a pair of high heel shoes from his first grade teacher.
Okay.
So he's got a teacher who loves to wear high heels, and for some reason she kept multiple pairs in the classroom. And at one point he steals one of the extra pairs.
So he's fascinated enough to snatch a pair up.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
He wants to take them home, and one of his classmates tells on him, and he's forced to confess, and his teacher gets angry, and Jerry gets really embarrassed by this and storms out. So again, kind of going back to his mother,
Yeah.
it's almost like the same thing. He's being scolded for this fetish. And I don't even know how a 5-6-year-old has a fetish, but maybe, I don't know what else to call it.
I guess it'd be like a kid today that has a fetish, or not a fetish, but a need to watch the same show every time they come home from school. They got to do it. They got to do it. Or they they won't eat a hot dog, right? They won't eat anything else. So this guy,
It's not a fetish at all.
what is that?
I don't know, but neither one of those are fetishes.
Yeah, that's true.
But I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
I really don't. I don't even know why I say I get what you're saying, because I really don't. So we jump 1 year ahead, and Jerry fails the second grade.
Okay.
And
That happens.
it does happen, but he's got all kinds of weird stuff going on. He's got the measles. He's got swollen glands, laryngitis, and he actually has to have a bunch of operations because he's got some infections.
So some major health issues.
He does have some health issues,
Yeah.
but it's at this point he's also starts complaining of a lot of headaches. So much so that he says he can't even see a lot of the time.
Oh. It's like migraines.
And at this point, they actually do an IQ test for Jerry, and it comes out to be pretty normal,
Okay.
which, take that for what it's worth.
Yeah.
But I think it's important information. So we jump to age 8. Jerry and his family moved to a place called Grants Pass, Oregon. And it's in Grants Pass that Jerry has neighbors that a couple of teenage girls. So he starts sneaking into their house with the girl's brother and playing with girls' clothes. It's not just high-heeled shoes, and we're going to find this as we go along. It's undergarments, underwear, shoes, and even just plain general women's clothes.
Dresses, whatever.
Yeah.
He's playing with it all.
Yeah, he's got a fascination that will lead to a fetish. And maybe that's the way we should have said it, right? Can a 6-year-old have a fetish? Maybe. Or would you call it a fascination?
I'd say fascination.
That is ultimately going to lead to a fetish.
Yeah.
That's probably a better way to say it. So again, fast forward a little bit. Jerry's going through puberty, 15, 16 years old. And Jerry's doing, now it's a fetish, because Jerry's doing some of the normal things that boys that age do, right?
Yeah.
And this is where he starts using the shoes and the underwear to aid in doing some of these things. But again, his mom is all over him.
Yeah, she is.
And she's disgusted by anything that has to do with sexuality or anything along those lines. And she goes as far as making Jerry wash his bed sheets by hand.
Sure.
Because they're all stained.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Again, how much of her doing what she has done in Jerry's childhood?
Oh, she helps create the monster.
Maybe. I mean, I think he had this was a pretty strong fascination.
Yeah, but I think she
exacerbated it.
Exactly.
I just wanted to use a big word.
And there you go.
Thank you.
And I actually knew what it meant.
Hey. So also at this time, Gibbs, this is when Jerry begins to have some bizarre fantasies involving like actually capturing a girl, forcing her to obey his every command, things like that.
Yeah.
Right. So he's starting to slide off the cliff.
Yeah. He's going in a different direction.
Right. And I guess, a lot of people have fetishes. There's nothing wrong with having a fetish.
No, as long as it's healthy.
Yeah. Jerry Brudos takes what could be a normal fetish to the nth degree.
Yeah.
Way over the line.
Not healthy and not having someone that wants to cooperate with your fetish.
Right, exactly. So at this point, the family moves once again and they end up in Corvallis, Oregon. And Jerry just keeps on, with his habit of stealing women's shoes and underwear. And at this point, he's basically just using them to masturbate. And that's what it comes down to. He's using this as a fetish tool to aid in
his masturbation.
Yes, exactly. So Gibbs, I think that's Jerry's life from birth up to 16. And now we've got to jump into crimes because he starts committing crimes at the age of 16. And the first one involves stealing, the underwear of an 18-year-old girl, but it doesn't end there because he's been doing that all along.
Right.
Right. So now he decides for whatever reason that he's going to ramp up.
Time to notch it up.
And his thought is that he wants a nude picture of this girl to use instead of relying on the underwear in his sexual gratification. So he sets up this very elaborate plot to try to get this girl to pose for a nude picture. Now, I can't imagine that in 1955 time frame that it was very easy to get an 18-year-old girl to pose for a nude picture.
I don't think it would have been easy.
Not that easy to take a picture in 1955.
I think it would have been hard to find a camera.
And then you got to take it to the local...
to get it developed.
You got to get it developed, right? It's not like today.
No.
Where everything's instant.
Right.
Snapchat.
Just got to have your cell phone with you.
I don't even know what half that stuff is. But so the plan that he comes up with is he asked this girl to come to his house with the understanding that he's going to help her get back her underwear, which he had stolen in the first place, but I guess she doesn't know this. Now, how he knows that it's missing and maybe she told him, I'm a little unclear about that part. So however it happens, this girl does come. And when she gets there, she's basically attacked by a masked man with a knife. The masked man makes her take off her clothes and he takes several photos of her. The man leaves, the girl gets dressed, and she flees. Now, as she's leaving, she runs into Jerry, who says, "Oh, I just saw the guy. I was locked in the barn, but I saw the guy run off." Now, we know this is like a Scream situation, right?
Yeah.
It sounds exactly like Scream.
Like it.
Maybe that's where they got it from.
Maybe they did.
But the girl leaves and she tells the police what happened. Now, however he did that, he set it up in a pretty ingenious way. I shouldn't give him credit. Maybe ingenious is not the right word, but
maybe he's trying to be the hero.
Yeah, obviously he went from being the attacker to being the one that says, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I saw him.
Right. I'm here for you.
I'm here for you. What can I do to help?" Now, a year later, Jerry is able to lure a 17-year-old girl into his car. He drives her to a deserted farmhouse and he beats her. So now he's changing again.
Yeah, his aggression's going up.
Right. Before it's been all about stealing, sexual gratification, even the nude photographs, he didn't hurt that girl.
Right.
But now he beats this girl pretty badly. Now there's a couple that stops at the scene of the crime and they notify the police. Now Jerry, again, he has this kind of story where he tells the police that he stopped to help this girl and that he was not the attacker. He was the savior.
Yeah. I was here to help.
Right. Now the couple, I think they knew he wasn't telling the truth because they had either seen him.
They could sense the bullshit.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take the Oregon police, state police, very long when they're questioning Jerry and he confesses. Now, because of that, they're able to search his house and car. They find, women's underwear, nude photos, photo equipment, and Jerry ends up getting arrested for assault and battery. Now, what happens to Jerry, though, is that he's committed to the Oregon State Hospital. And the initial diagnosis is adjustment reaction of adolescence with sexual deviation and fetishism. That's a hell of a diagnosis.
Yeah.
But the strange part about it is, so he's hospitalized in this state hospital, but he's allowed to attend high school during the day.
It's kind of strange.
Right. So he's got this initial diagnosis. He's being held because of the assault and battery, but they're like, but you know what? During the day, go ahead and go to school.
Be around all these women.
Right.
Yeah. And when you're done, come here, eat your dinner, and go to bed.
Yeah, I just didn't get that at all. The other thing is eventually they do diagnose him as borderline schizophrenic.
Not surprised.
But I think that was a very common diagnosis back then.
A lot of people were probably just thrown into that.
Yes.
That was an easy
I think that was
fix.
like a catch-all.
Yeah.
When they weren't sure exactly what was going on with you.
Right.
Oh, you're borderline schizophrenic.
Right.
Now, Jerry wasn't there. I mean, this was not a short-term thing. He was there for 8 or 9 months.
Yeah, it's a long time.
Hospitalized, but allowed to go to school. And eventually they let him go and say that he's not a danger to society. Now, after he's released, he goes back, he graduates high school, but his GPA is very, very low.
Yeah, so he's not the brightest one based off GPA.
Based off GPA. I don't know how much of that has to do with the fact that he was in a mental hospital and attending school.
Yeah, that could have made a difference on his test scores and all that back then.
Is he studying at night while he's at the mental hospital?
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
I'm not sure how much studying you get done.
True Crime All the Time is sponsored by BetterHelp. You know, folks, therapy can feel like a big investment, but let's think about the state of your mind. It's just as important as your physical health. Traditional in-person therapy can cost anywhere from $100 to $250 per session, which adds up really fast. But with BetterHelp Online Therapy, you can save, on average, up to 50% per session. With BetterHelp, you pay a flat fee for weekly sessions, saving you big on cost and time. And you get quality care at a price that makes sense and can help you with anything from anxiety to everyday stress. Your mental health is worth it, and now it's within reach. I've used the BetterHelp service for years. And I love the fact that, I can connect with a therapist in a comfortable spot in my home on my laptop. With over 30,000 therapists, BetterHelp is the world's largest online therapy platform, having served over 5 million people globally. Your well-being is worth it. Visit BetterHelp.com/TCAT today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/TCATT. You know, even the smallest step forward can make a big difference in your financial future. When you open a Chime checking account, you're one step closer to a better financial future with no maintenance fees, fee-free overdraft up to $200, or getting paid up to 2 days early with direct deposit. Making progress has never been easier. I think we've all been in that position where we've had an overdraft. Well, with Chime, you can overdraft up to $200 with no fees. That's amazing. And they have over 50,000 fee-free ATMs. Make progress towards a better financial future with Chime. Open your account in 2 minutes at chime.com/TCAT. That's chime.com/TCATT. Chime feels like progress. Banking services and debit card provided by the Bancorp Bank N.A. or Stride Bank N.A., members FDIC. Spot me eligibility requirements and overdraft limits apply. Fees apply at out-of-network ATMs. MyPay eligibility requirements apply. Credit limits range from $20 to $500. $2 fee applies to get funds instantly. Crime checking account required. Go to chime.com/disclosures for details.
So Gibbs, we jumped to 1959. Jerry Brudos is 20 years old, and he joins the Army.
Yeah.
Now, you and I have done a number of episodes, 21 on this to be exact. We just talked about it. How many of them, of these serial killers, were in the armed forces?
Majority.
A lot.
Yeah.
The vast majority.
Yeah.
I don't want to disparage the armed forces at all, so I'm not saying it that way. I just don't know, how much of it has to do with the times, right? The 50s and the 60s.
I would say it's the times, because back in those years, I think that was the fix-all, right? If you weren't fitting in, not for everybody, I'm just saying there was a handful of people that they would just, if you weren't fitting in with the community the way you should have, if your grades weren't where you should have been, if you didn't go off to college, then you were pushed off and your parents pushed you off into the services.
Or was like...
Or you had your calling, right? You got drafted,
yeah.
Depending on what year it was.
Right. But I think there's something to that. I think... and he did go to college, right? For a little bit.
For a little bit, and some vocational school too.
But didn't do well. And dropped out. So yeah. I like I do like your hypothesis, which is, he had tried some different things. He wasn't finding his path. And a lot of people say, well, I'm going to join the Army. There's structure there. There's something for me to, that's a path for me to go down.
Sure.
But I just, we do talk about it, and I find it interesting. I don't know that it means anything. It's just interesting that a number of these serial killers were in either the Army or some branch of the armed services. But again, things don't go well for him there either.
No.
He's having a hard time basically fitting in anywhere at this point, because he only makes it, I think, 6 or 7 months in the Army. And at one point, he's discharged for what was called bizarre obsessions.
Yeah, that was,
But he went to go see the Army psychiatrist.
Right.
And I'm sure it probably didn't take him too long to figure out that this guy's got something going on.
Yeah, he's not stable.
I would have loved to have been a fly on that wall to hear that conversation between the Army psychiatrist and Jerry Brudos.
Back in 1959, they wouldn't have even been able to run it out of them. That's what they did back then. If you were
try to run it.
Yeah. If you were discipline issues or something they didn't like, they would just exercise you, run it out of you, thinking that they could, just get you changed. But
yeah, you're not going to run this out of Jerry Brudos.
No.
Bizarre obsessions.
No, unless you're in high heels in front of them.
Yeah. That would just make it worse.
So he gets released from the Army. He moves back home, and his mom doesn't let him stay in the house. So he has to stay out in one of the sheds on the property.
He was really loved.
Yeah.
by his mom.
He was feeling the love. So I don't know what this shed looked like and how housewarming it was, but I can't imagine it being great. But during this time, he he comes across a young girl and he follows her home, and he comes up behind her and he basically strangles her till she passes out. Doesn't kill her, but she passes out. Once she passes out, he steals her shoes, takes them home back to his shed, and sleeps with him every night because it makes him feel
safe
and like he's a stronger, powerful person.
Yeah, that's something.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, at least he didn't kill her. I guess it's the only thing
That's the only good thing.
The only good thing I can say about that. I mean, I'm sure she was scarred for life.
Yeah, I would think.
Having gone through that. So let's jump up to 62, because this is when the next important thing in Jerry's life happens. At this point, he's working at a radio station, and he meets and marries a 17-year-old girl named Darcy. And they would go on to have 2 children, and they ended up settling in Salem, Oregon. Now, there are some strange things that came out about the relationship between Jerry and Darcy.
Mm-hmm.
One of the weirdest things is that early on, like honeymoon stage type stuff, he's asking Darcy to do all of the housework naked, except for only a pair of high heels, and he would sit around just taking pictures of her.
Yeah.
But at this time, Gibbs, this is when the headaches and the migraines come back into the picture. And maybe even some blackouts, he would say. At this point, he starts having what he calls blackouts. Now, again, a lot of this comes from him later in life, right? And we always say that you have to take some of this with a grain of salt. But his comment was that the only way to relieve his symptoms was to go out at night on these, what he would call raids.
Right.
You know, stealing shoes and underwear. And lacy garments, the whole 9 yards.
You know, I think back in that time, it was probably a little bit easier to steal some undergarments because people didn't really have dryers, so a lot of things were hung out to dry. So I'm guessing it might have been a little easier just to walk past the clothesline and.
No, I think that's a great point, because I, as far as I know, he's not breaking into people's houses.
Yeah, so I'm thinking he's just strolling through the neighborhood, grabbing what's on the clotheslines and.
Now, I don't know how he's getting the shoes, though.
No, I'm not sure about that either.
So maybe he is having to break into to some houses because people don't leave their shoes out.
But this is early 1960s, so
most houses probably weren't even locked.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right about that. We kind of have to take like 62 to 67. You know, there's a 5-year period here where he's a little quiet, at least when it comes to committing serious crimes.
Yeah. Well, he had a daughter, right?
Yeah, he did have a daughter, but I don't think he ever stops the stealing of shoes and underwear and women's clothing and things like that. But at this point, he starts dressing in drag. And
there's a change.
Yeah, so that's a little bit of a change here. And sometimes he would even wear women's underwear and women's clothing under his own clothes. So whatever that feeling, it gave him some type of feeling to do that. And as you said, this is when his second child is born. Now, what's really interesting is what's going on with his relationship with his wife.
Yeah, it's changing.
It is changing, because to the point where she won't even let him in the room when the child is born.
Yeah.
So obviously something's not going right.
No, if you don't want your husband in the room with you,
something's
up.
Yeah, she knows something. Now, Jerry would say later that this really upset him. Because of this, now, like I said, he claims because of what happened, he ends up stalking another woman, following her home. And in the stalking period, he's waiting for her to fall asleep.
Right.
He breaks into her house and he's trying to steal her shoes, but she wakes up.
Big mistake.
Yeah. And Jerry ends up choking her, doesn't kill her again, chokes her till she passes out, but he rapes this woman.
Yes.
So again, he's...
I mean, it's escalating.
It's escalating.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for
that's
sure.
the word I was looking for. He does end up stealing her shoes, and he flees the scene. Now, this one for me is a little different because it's almost like he wanted to steal the shoes of somebody that he coveted, targeted.
Yeah.
Right? He's not going into a random house and stealing a random person's shoes or underwear.
No, he's stalking.
He saw somebody.
Yeah.
And he wanted that specific person's shoes.
Sure.
So, I mean, that's telling me something. But like we mentioned, things are starting to escalate, and it's really, not very long where we get into Jerry's first murder. So, Gibbs, we're at January 26th, 1968, and a woman named Linda Slauson is going door to door selling encyclopedias. There's going to be a whole ton of people listening to this that don't even know what an encyclopedia is.
Yeah. It was the iPhone of the day.
It was the only thing you had.
It was Google.
Remember back in the day? I mean, if you did a book report.
You had to have the encyclopedia.
Yeah.
And you better get to the library before somebody in your class got the
H.
The H that you needed, right?
That's funny. It's not funny because about what's about to happen.
Right.
So she's going door to door. Big mistake because she reaches Jerry's house. And Jerry convinces her to come in and go to his workshop, which was like in his garage, I think.
So tip one, if someone wants you to go to their workshop, don't go to their workshop.
Don't go to their workshop.
No.
But I assume he's doing this on the pretense that she's going to make a sale,
Sure.
right? He's going to buy.
My money's in my workshop. Come on down.
Something like that. Mm-hmm. But very quickly he turns and he hits her with a 2x4, and then he strangles her, kills her.
Mm-hmm.
But he doesn't just do that. He removes her clothes and he dresses her with some of his own collection.
Which is weird.
It's very strange.
Yeah.
She's already wearing clothes.
It's like a live, well, not alive, but a dead grown-up doll.
Like a doll.
Yeah.
Like he's changing a doll's clothes almost is like what he's doing.
Yeah, it's weird. But for me, it gets weirder.
Oh, much weirder. Because he ends up cutting off her left foot and puts it into one of his high-heeled shoes.
Right.
And then he puts the whole thing in the freezer.
Strange.
Because my assumption is this is a trophy.
Oh, yeah.
And he's going to keep this, and he's going to use this to do, his thing.
Right.
Over and over.
Yep.
And that's it's something we've talked about with serial killers is trophies, right? That's a big part of some serial killers. They like to take trophies so that they can relive the feeling or the whatever sexual gratification they got during the act. My assumption is it floods back into them
Right.
as he's holding this leg with a high heel shoe on it.
Bizarre, but yeah, it's his turn on machine there.
Yeah.
And he'll do what he has to do and move on.
And then he puts it back in the freezer until he needs it again.
Right.
Now, I don't know what happens if his wife needs to get, a pound of hamburger.
Yeah.
She's
just
gonna
slide it
see,
over out of the way.
What the hell's this leg and this high heel doing in here?
Oh, Jerry, he's at it again.
The hallmarks of psychopathy are this lack of empathy, a sense of entitlement, narcissism. Most serial killers are psychopaths. It is the personality disorder that allows them to commit a homicide and come up and deal with their family as if nothing's happened.
He took a hacksaw and cut off one of her feet. He saved that as a trophy, put it in the freezer that he had. Periodically took it out. It was a fetish item, and put a female shoe on it, masturbated, got sexual arousal from it.
All right, so some of the things that we said. Again, what I find interesting is the comment about the separation of the family life and the serial killer life.
Yeah.
1 minute he's chopping off a woman's leg, putting a shoe on it, putting it in the freezer. And then basically he's walking upstairs to have dinner with his family.
Yeah, eating dinner with his wife and kids like nothing. Normal
Right.
day at the office, honey.
So that is the, where they're talking about the whole psychopathy,
Yeah.
no empathy, but also no bad emotions.
Right.
There's nothing causing them to feel bad about it. Again, that's his first murder, but there were a couple of people or women that go missing later on in 1968. Stephanie Vico, she's reported missing out of Portland. And Jan Whitney was 23 years old. She was going to the University of Oregon. She's reported missing.
Yeah. And I think it's important too, the previous ones, he says he threw them in the river. This is kind of his thing. He dumps them in the bodies of water.
Well, and I think if I remember correctly, he even went as far as faking a flat tire on the bridge so that he could throw the body over the bridge into the water.
That's a good way to do it. So
It actually is.
I mean,
again, we hate to tell people how to do things,
but
but
if you're going to throw a body into the river,
if a cop comes up and asks you what you're doing there,
better have out your jack and your wrench.
Yeah, you better have an alibi for sure. So they find Jan Whitney's car at a rest stop on Interstate 5. So Jerry's next victim is Karen Sprinker, and she was also a student. She was going to Oregon State, 19 years old at the time, and she was slated to meet her mom for lunch at a department store in downtown Salem, and she never showed up. Now, her car would be found as well, locked and abandoned on the store's rooftop sometime later. But again, no trace of Karen. Now, the one thing that's different about this case or this incident is that there were two young girls that were able to tell police that they had witnessed a large man dressed in drag on that parking garage rooftop where Karen's car was ultimately found on that day.
Here's a sign.
All right, Gibbs. So April of 1969. So that was March. Karen was in March. Now we're just 1 month later. And this is where Jerry starts to ramp up at an incredible pace.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not really sure. I never was able to put it together of what was going on or what caused him to increase the frequency the way that he did.
But he kicks it up.
But there had to be something. So on the 21st of April, he runs into a woman named Sharon Wood, again in a parking garage, and at Portland State University. So again,
he's targeting universities.
Yes,
right.
He is
looking for that certain age, I guess.
Yep. So he likes young 20s at this point in his life. That's young 20s girls. That's what he's targeting. Now, Sharon is a fighter. And
thank goodness.
To the point where during the attack, she ends up biting Jerry on the hand and drawing blood. But Jerry's a really big guy.
Right.
And he overpowers her, beats her, knocks her unconscious. But at that point, there's a car coming. And this caused him to have to leave and run. But Sharon survives.
Thankfully.
But because of the way everything happened, at this point in time, police aren't able to connect Sharon Wood's attack with some of these other university students.
Right. They just think they have missing students.
But the thought is, and I don't know, you tell me if I'm wrong, he would have killed Sharon Wood.
Oh, I think so.
And by sheer luck, this car happened to come along and scare him off.
Yeah, I mean, she probably felt like she hit the lotto that day because she survived.
Yes. No, I think you're right. And especially after everything comes out and she realizes who this guy was. Mm-hmm. I mean, she had to feel incredibly lucky. Like she had somebody sitting on her shoulder,
That day.
somebody watching over her,
Absolutely.
because a lot of others were not so lucky.
Yeah.
But and we said, he's escalating, and he's escalating to the point where just the next day, he must be frustrated because his attack on Sharon Wood doesn't, go down the way that he wanted it to. And he tries to abduct a 14-year-old by trying to force her into her car.
Yeah.
Now, somehow she's able to get out.
Yeah, she escapes.
She escapes from him, luckily. And so another person that, again, after all this comes out, and she probably sees the pictures and knows who this guy was, had to feel like she had somebody watching over.
Right. But he's frustrated, so he just goes down the road not too much further to the middle school, and that's where he tries to abduct somebody else, a girl that's 15 years old. And she screams, he's driving his mom's Volkswagen, Carmen Ghia, which back then was kind of a cool car, if I remember right.
Yeah. No, I think it was.
So he's driving that around. He tries to pick her up, but luckily for her, she screams, she yells. There's a neighbor in the front yard, and that scares him off, and he pulls away. So
good for her. I mean, that's what she should do, right?
Yeah.
She did the best possible thing: scream, run, yell, draw attention.
And when all this breaks loose eventually, because of his picture in the paper, she identifies him as that's the guy that tried to pick me up.
Right.
Back when I made the complaint.
So that was still on the 22nd?
That was on the 22nd.
So he tried to abduct two women,
Yeah.
two girls.
Yeah, at this point, right? Because 14 and 15. So he's coming down on age, which is weird.
And that is weird, right? Because we just mentioned he's targeting early 20s college students.
Yeah.
And he has a bad experience, and then he somehow switches to
So I think his
young teenage girls.
I think he thought, well, if I can't overpower a 20-year-old, let me drop down to a girl in
14,
15, where I can have a better chance of getting.
You might be right.
Yeah. Maybe that's what he tries, and it doesn't work for him.
No, but it does make sense that because of frustration or whatever, he's going to pick what he feels to be an easier target.
Yeah.
So, but so both of those happened on the 22nd. But again, the very next day on the 23rd, a woman named Linda Saley, she's 22, out of Portland, she disappears from a shopping center. She's there trying to buy a gift for her boyfriend, and she's last seen walking out of a jewelry store at about 5:30. Her car is ultimately found in the parking garage of the shopping center. Now, what would come out later is that Jerry had posed as a police officer to gain Linda's trust and ultimately had strangled her to death.
So we've heard that before.
Yes.
The badge, the uniform.
Yep. We've heard that more than once for sure.
I mean, back then people probably fell for it a lot easier. Today, I mean, even if you were a real police officer,
Well, that's
I
true.
think people are going to look at you like, I don't think so.
Yeah. I mean, police officers are I feel bad for a lot of them, a lot of the good ones.
Sure.
But back then, I think people really trusted police officers.
Sure.
They
did.
really had a lot of respect for police officers. So, yeah, I agree with you that back then it would have been much easier to pose.
Yeah.
And gain somebody's trust. But it's at this point that the police are putting all of this together, right? You've got a number of college-aged women, and they start to think, hey, we've got a serial killer on our hands here. So because of this, Gibbs, I think you've got a lot of law enforcement agencies from various counties, various jurisdictions that are all coming together, and they're looking for a number of months into all different types of leads on these missing women. Basically, it's this guy out fishing by himself, and he stumbles across a body. Now he's on the Long Tom River, 12 miles south of Corvallis. And this is May 10th. So it's really just a month, right? After Brudos kind of ramped up and went on this spree in a short period of time, that this fisherman finds the body. It's floating, on the top of the water. He gets in his car. Again, no cell phones, right? Nothing like that. He's got to drive to the nearest gas station, find a payphone, and call the police. So sheriff's deputies, they book it out to the river, and they're taking a look at the body. And basically what they find is that the body's been tied using nylon cord, some copper wire, but it's been tied to an automobile transmission. Now we know that's not a light piece of material.
There's some weight there.
So, I'm kind of wondering now how he got, I understand how dumping a body into a river, I think would be tough enough.
Right.
How do you get a body that is tied to a transmission, a very heavy transmission?
Yeah. In the water.
Into the water.
Right.
There's no way you're doing that over a bridge, right?
I wouldn't think so.
And maybe that's why, it was reported that the body was floating near the surface of the water.
Yeah.
Because obviously he couldn't have got it in the deep part of the river.
So maybe he just thought if you get it in the shallow but kept her underneath, that eventually the water would do its...
Maybe he rolled. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm speculating now because I don't have all those details. But so they take the body out of the water, and they would later discover that this was Linda Saley. She's the one that disappeared from Portland, from the shopping center, shopping for something for her boyfriend.
Right.
My wife and I do a lot of shopping online, and we always use Rakuten. Rakuten is the smartest way to save money when you shop because you earn cash back at over 3,500 stores. We're talking fashion, beauty, electronics, home essentials, travel, dining, concert tickets, and more. Your favorite stores like Macy's, Nike, Sephora, Dyson, and Lowe's. And that's just to name a few. Pay Rakuten to send them shoppers. And Rakuten then passes on a part of that payment to its members as cashback. Cashback is deposited directly into your PayPal account, or Rakuten can send you a check. You can even maximize your savings by stacking cash back on top of other deals, like store sales and coupons. You're already shopping at your favorite stores. Why not save while you're doing it? It really is a no-brainer. Membership is free, and it's easy to sign up. Get the Rakuten app now and join the 17 million members who are already saving. Cashback rates change daily. See Rakuten.com for details. That's Rakuten. Your cash back really adds up. Hey folks, see if you've ever had this problem. You're trying to eat a little healthier, but you're in the grocery store aisle, you're looking at packaging, nutrition labels, and they're so confusing, you don't know what's good for you and what's not. Well, this is why I love Thrive Market, my go-to online grocery store for getting all of my healthy essentials delivered, and I don't even have to leave my couch. Finding better options for the whole family is easy with Thrive Market's Healthy Swap Scanner. Just scan a product, and it instantly recommends healthier swaps. This is how my wife and I found our new favorite snack, IQ bars. Sometimes I eat one in the morning with my coffee, sometimes just later on in between meals. They also have so many on-site filters that make it simple to shop by the needs of everyone in the family. Maybe you have someone who needs gluten-free food, somebody that has a peanut allergy. Well, no more scouring ingredient labels when you can just filter it all on Thrive Market. My wife and I often use the high protein filter to stock up on things like Sieti chips. Ready to make the switch? Go to thrivemarket.com/TCAT for 30% off your first order, plus a free $60 gift. That's THRIVE market.com/TCATT, thrivemarket.com/TCAT.
Now, like we said, we think the police have put a lot of this together, that there's somebody committing all of these. So because of that, I think it's clear that they believe there's going to be more bodies to search for
Yeah.
in that same area. And so they start having the divers come out, they're dragging the river. And just a couple days later, they do find the body of Karen Sprinker. And it's found pretty close, like 50 feet
Yeah.
from where they found Linda Saley's body.
It's tied down too.
Yeah. Well, and again, it is tied down with a car engine.
Which is, even if it's one of the small Volkswagen ones, that's some weight.
I don't care what,
Yeah.
it's not a lawnmower engine. This is a car engine.
Yeah.
You usually need to hook it up and then use that hoist.
Right.
I mean, this guy's not walking around with this
You
car
throw it
engine.
on your shoulder.
Or he's some kind of Hercules.
Yeah, like me.
This is some part I can't figure out, though. How he's getting these women.
Well, it seems like he dumps them at the same spot on Tom's
Long Tom River.
Yeah, Long Tom River. So I'm wondering if he's driving if he has a truck or something that he drives back that way, and backs
it up,
Yeah.
just pushes it down like an embankment and it
Yeah.
rolls. It's got to be.
It's got to be something like that.
There's no way he's getting up on the bridge and
No.
lifting all this over. Okay.
I'm sure we got some mechanics that are listening, and I'm sure they could tell us if they thought they could do that.
Well,
but,
I know for a fact I can't lift a car engine.
Yeah, I can.
So again,
but not with a body.
but not with a body on it.
Yeah.
So again, nylon cord is what he uses to tie the body to the engine. So Gibbs, both victims, Linda and Karen, they're found partially clothed, but there's a real big difference that they find when they start to examine Karen's body.
I mean, on her body, Jerry decided he wanted some souvenirs, so he cut off both her breasts. And at that point, when he did that, he stuffed the holes with some paper towels, and then I guess he had some bras out of his collection and put one of his favorite ones on her. So he put that bra over where he cut the breast off to, I don't know, to hide the wounds or what. But
Yeah, for what reason, I have no idea.
But again, it was one of the bras from his favorite collection
But
that he had.
But because I was getting ready to ask, why put paper towels in there? But
That kind of makes sense if I think about it, right?
if you're going to put the bra over top,
Yeah.
it's almost like the paper towels are replacing the breast that he cut off.
Yeah. Clearly he cut the breast off, put the bra on, but he stuffed the bra, the wounds with the brown paper to give the look
Of a full...
that she still had breasts.
Yes.
Because we know that he enjoyed having sex with the women after he's killed them.
Yeah, so I mean, it does come out that he was a necrophiliac.
Yeah.
I mean, he enjoyed
Absolutely he did.
not just the other fetish crazy stuff that we've talked about, but he actually had sex with the dead bodies.
He did.
And so if you start off thinking, well, that's crazy. Why would you cut the breasts? And then why would you stuff paper towels in there? But if you put it all together, now it's still crazy. Don't get me wrong.
It's definitely crazy.
But if I'm putting myself in his mind, which is scary, it does make sense, I'm sure, to him that he wants a woman that looks like she has,
Full breast. Yeah.
before he has sex with this dead body.
Right.
But so then it goes back to, why does he cut the breasts off? And we find out later that he actually takes the breasts, dips them in some kind of resin or some kind of material,
Right.
and actually makes paperweights out of them.
Yeah. I mean, who wouldn't want a breast paperweight
I don't want a breast paperweight.
in your office?
How
weird is that,
I don't
man?
think the people at work would appreciate that.
No, in today's world, you probably get in trouble.
Yeah.
So, for many reasons.
But anyway, so to me, that's like, it's sick. Another level of sick.
He's collecting feet off his victims, and he's putting them in high heels and storing in his freezer. Now he's got breast from his victims and making paperweights out of them.
Well, and he's turned to having sex with dead bodies.
Which
you can
is
see
really-
the progression.
Yeah.
Right? It starts with fantasy. It starts with
Yep.
stealing objects from that women have worn
Sure. Underwear, bras, nylons.
to use for masturbation.
Yep.
And we've talked about this a lot, right? That can't be enough for some people forever.
Nope.
They
never
have
is.
to they have to go to the next level.
Right.
So eventually he commits, a rape. And then eventually he commits murder, cutting off parts, a foot, essentially.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, you really can see in Jerry Brudos the progression of what in some people could be a very harmless fascination / fetish
Right.
that could go on forever like that.
Yeah.
And nobody would ever know about it. But that's not how his mind obviously works. He chose to keep ratcheting it up until eventually, it led to murder and necrophilia and all of that. So obviously the police are investigating all of this. And at some point they're interviewing students at Oregon State University because obviously one of the victims went there. And it's at this point that they find out that some of the female students have been receiving phone calls from some unidentified man who claims to be a Vietnam vet looking for a date. So one of the students actually goes out with this unidentified caller on a date. I'm not sure why they would choose to do that, but they did. And this is May of 1969. And during the date, the man makes some very strange references. He talks about dead women found in the river. He talks about taking his date, who's with him, away and strangling her.
Oh.
So bad date.
Yeah.
You're not going to get a second date
No.
by talking about strangling somebody on your first date. But because of this, she's freaked out. The date ends or whatever, and she gets home. She calls the police. And she says, this, very strange thing happened to me.
Right.
She is able to give the police a description of this man. And what police ask her to do is to get back in touch with them if the man calls back to set up a meeting or a second date. And of course, Jerry does. We know it's Jerry. He contacts the girl a second time, and she immediately calls the police, but she sets up a date with him. Jerry comes to pick her up, and instead of finding his date,
Chris Hansen
pops out. No. The police are there waiting for him.
Yeah.
They interviewed Jerry, and they obviously are getting strong vibes from him, and they decide that they've got to investigate him further, that he is definitely a possible suspect in all this stuff that's gone down. So what happens at this time, Gibbs, is that one of the women that Brudos had attempted to abduct earlier is able to identify him.
Yeah, the 15-year-old.
And pick him out of a lineup. And because of that's what gives the police the ammunition to get a search warrant for his house. And they just find a treasure trove of stuff at his house, right? They find nylon rope, which is going to match the rope that was used to tie the bodies to the engine and the transmission. They find the photos that he had taken of the victims, some of his victims.
They also find some copper wire that was used. So I mean, they're, like you said, Mike, they're building a case.
And I think a pretty easy case, right? Because you got photos of the victims.
Well, and you got photos of the victims in different stages.
Oh yeah.
I don't.
This is not a glamour shot from the mall. These are bad photos.
Yeah, he liked to take pictures of them while they were dying.
Yes.
When they were dead.
So I don't think there's any doubt that at this point the police have enough evidence to arrest Brudos. And they do try to serve him with a warrant, and he tries to take off on them to get away from him. Now, they got all this information and evidence for the warrant, but what they get the warrant for is not the murders. It's actually for the attempted abduction of the young girl that had occurred about a month before. Because of that, they're able to get him in, and they're able to start the interrogation process. Now, one thing that I found very interesting is that at one point when Jerry is in jail, he calls Darcy. He's trying to convince her to burn some clothing and other evidence that they must not have found, and she's not having any of it.
She's not going to cooperate at all, will she?
No. You know, the other thing I found very interesting is that Brudos actually had friends, and friends that described him as a devoted family man. He didn't drink, he didn't smoke, and he didn't cuss. So he had that going for him.
Sure.
Now he dressed in drag, and he killed people and raped them and cut their body parts off. But other than that,
He was a nice guy, huh?
he was a nice guy.
Yeah.
I just found that interesting and I think that you see that a lot, right? People are leading two separate, completely separate lives. They've got I'm a family man. You know, I go to work, I come home, take the kids to t-ball practice, I go to church, whatever it is.
Right.
So all their friends are seeing this person, but hidden underneath is the monster. And once the monster comes out, then they're doing and committing all these unbelievable.
Frog demon.
The frog demon comes out.
Right.
It's that part always fascinates me. How people can lead that type of double life to the point that their friends are coming forward saying there is no possible way that this person could
have done that.
Could have done all that. I've known him for 20 years.
Just because Gibby has a K-bar and travels the country,
right?
There's no way that Gibby could have.
I'd have to stand up for you and say there is no way that that Gibby used that K-bar knife. I don't care if his serial number matches the receipt that you found.
Yeah,
I don't care.
It wasn't him.
There's no way.
I know that picture looks like him.
It was not him on that video.
It's not him.
So in early June, now keep in mind, all of this is happening very quickly. Right? March, April, May, June. Very quickly.
Yes, when the court system worked well.
So in early June, investigators are able to get Jerry to confess. And he confesses to the two murders of the women that they just discovered the bodies of. Right? So that's Karen and Linda. But he also goes on to confess to the murder of Linda Slauson. That was the woman that was selling the encyclopedias.
Right.
And also to Jan Whitney.
Yeah, his first known victim.
Well, maybe. She's one of the ones we talked about in the very beginning.
Right.
We didn't actually call her a victim. We just said she went missing. There was a couple of people. Stephanie Vicco was the other one. Now, I don't think he confesses to her. But again, we talk about this too, right? Just because, how many more could there be? You never really know.
You don't know. More than they find and more that he admits to. Put it that way.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt. But you talked about things moving quickly back then. So within a week, they make the big announcement that Jerome Brudos, 30 years old, he's been charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder in those 4 murders that he confessed to. But then the grand jury meets on June 4th, and they only indict him on 1 count of first-degree murder, and that's the death of Karen Sprinker. So to that charge, Brudo pleads not guilty by reason of insanity.
Mm-hmm.
And it's at this point they start testing him. Several psychiatrists start testing Jerry. And they actually say he has an above average IQ and cognition. And all of them across the board say that he's not criminally insane. He knows what he's doing. He knew what he did was wrong.
Right.
He just didn't give a shit.
But they still diagnose him with some labels.
Oh, he's got labels, yeah. Antisocial personality. Again, this fetishism.
Right.
That's a hard word to say, by the way. Transvestitism, exhibitionism, voyeurism. And I think the one that they settle on that is really damning is sadism, right? He's a sadist. He's a sexual sadist. There's
Right.
no doubt about that. But as this time, they're still investigating him. The evidence continues to mount, and they ultimately charge him with 3 counts of first-degree murder, and that's for Jan Whitney, Linda Salee, and Karen Sprinker. And at this point, he decides to take back his not guilty by reason of insanity plea, and he pleads guilty. And this is what, again, you talked about things moving fast. That very same day, he's sentenced to 3 consecutive life sentences.
Which is good.
That day that he pleads guilty.
Yeah.
I mean,
like
it's
that.
wrapped up, done, over. Now there is, and the reason for that's because there's no death penalty in Oregon, right? I assume if there was, he would have been.
Yeah, I would think he would have been placed on that.
Yeah. Now the one thing we said 3, and that's because he was not charged with the murder of Linda Slauson because they never did find her body. My assumption with that, Gibbs, and I don't know what you think, is that they had 3 already. They knew that they had him.
Yeah, he was going to go to prison and never come back
And
out.
that he was never going to get out. So
Right.
I kind of hate that for the family of Linda Slauson, but I'm sure they have closure. I'm sure they know he did it.
Yeah, I think they're glad he rotted away in prison.
Yeah.
But, I'm sure they wish they had the body to bury. But
So we say it's all wrapped up. It's got a nice bow on it, but that doesn't stop the investigation. Because there were a total of 12 women that went missing in and around the area where he lived during the time before he was arrested. So that investigation kept going. And this is where things kind of got a little crazy, because a neighbor of the Brudoses, am I saying that right?
sure,
I'm asking you.
I know.
No. But a neighbor implicates Darcy, his wife, in one of the murders, claiming that Darcy helped Jerry carry the body out of the garage.
Okay.
Now, this goes back to what you and I were saying. How is somebody... Now, I don't know how much help Darcy would be.
Right.
Because in my mind, whether you're talking about an engine or something like that, it would take multiple men or a hoist.
Yeah.
Like your theory was, if you can hoist it into the bed of the truck, maybe you can push it out and let it roll. But I don't think your wife's going to be able to help you carry an engine.
No, and this goes back to, we've had other cases where you would have thought the wife would have known, right? I mean, you can go back to, the mass murder guy in Indiana, where he hit the nightclubs.
Herb Baumeister.
You would have thought his wife, with all those bodies buried in the backyard, and to the fact that her son actually brought some bones to her.
A skull or something.
And she just thought it was something from a long time, right? I mean,
yeah.
So does the wife really know? I don't know.
I think that's a question that you have in a lot of these cases.
Sure. How do you not know if he's got a frozen foot and a breast for a paperweight, but maybe she just never goes in.
Maybe he does all the cooking. Maybe he's got the freezer locked. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Who knows?
But, ultimately Darcy is charged with aiding and abetting first-degree murder. And this is for Karen Sprinker.
Mm-hmm.
They have a trial. She testifies, but she is found not guilty.
Sure. Yeah. She claims she had no involvement.
Yep. And the jury believed that.
Yep.
Now, she does divorce Jerry. Shocker.
Yeah, smart move.
She changes her name, which I don't blame her,
Yeah.
and moves on with her life.
Probably one of the smartest things she did during that time. It's also said that she wouldn't let her kids go see her father.
Or even write to
Their
him.
father. Or write to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I heard. Yeah, I had that too.
Yeah.
Wouldn't even let them write a letter to him,
Right.
let alone go see him.
Well, he didn't deserve it, that's for sure.
No, I don't blame her one bit. So we have to talk about Jerry's time in prison
Yeah.
because there's some interesting stuff here.
That's if it's what I'm thinking you're going to say, it's definitely bizarre.
And normally we don't talk about this part, but we have to because it's said that Jerry Brudos had piles and piles of women's shoe catalogs in his cell. Somehow he was writing to all these companies, basically asking them to send their catalogs to him. And in the letter, he was putting that these catalogs were his substitute for pornography.
Yeah.
He's basically telling them, hey, I need these catalogs.
Yeah.
This is what I use.
Yeah. It's my masturbation material.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I thought that was crazy that they actually would send him.
Here's your Sears catalog or
Yeah.
JCPenney's or whatever it was back in the day. Woolworths.
Now, as most people, he pled guilty, but he lodged appeal after appeal. And one of the reasons he used was that one of the photographs taken of him with one of the victim's corpses
Okay.
should not have been enough to prove his guilt. Because the reason is, he's saying that that's not the body of one of the people that he was convicted of killing. So he's not saying I didn't pose with a dead body.
Yeah.
He's just saying
It was the wrong body.
it wasn't one of the three or four people, the three people that you convicted me on. So the question is, who was it then? Somebody else that we didn't know you killed? But Jerry had a lot of trouble in prison. You know, he was beaten regularly by inmates, which I don't think anybody's going to lose a whole lot of sleep over.
No.
The most interesting one, I guess, is in 1970, it was said that he was treated for rectal bleeding that was classified as being caused by hemorrhoids or, and I'm using air quotes,
Yeah.
other. And I think we know what that other is.
I think we do.
And again,
Don't feel bad for him.
I don't feel bad for him either. This was a bad guy. He hurt women. He killed women. You know, I'm not condoning that, but I'm also at the same time, I'm not feeling real bad for Jerry Brudos.
Payback's a bitch.
It is. So we mentioned that Jerry got 3 life sentences, but somehow he was up for parole. In 1995, the parole board voted to ban him from ever getting parole. What I didn't understand is that it was said that even though he was banned from ever getting parole, they were going to allow him to interview with the board every 2 years. None of that made sense to me.
Mm-mm.
They're basically saying you're never going to get out, but we're going to let you plead your case every 2 years.
Okay.
So in 99, he goes up for parole. That's what I'm calling it. He's doing this interview. He's 60 years old. They don't give it to him. They've already said he's not going to get it. Why
Right.
go through the motion? And the parole board comes out and they basically say to the victims' families, we're promising you Jerry will never be set free. At one of these parole interviews, which happened every 2 years, you know, obviously they're asking him questions. And one of the questions was, you know, Jerry, why did you commit these torturous murders that put you in prison? He offered no response other than to say that this hearing was not the right forum for me to talk about it.
Yeah.
He didn't want to talk about it.
He used some lame excuse that he didn't want it to get out to the local press of what he said and then get out to the victims' families, things like that. So that was his excuse.
So we get to the end eventually Brudos dies in prison on March 28th, 2006, and he dies from liver cancer. And I guess the only interesting thing about it was that at the time, he had spent the most time in jail or prison of any inmate in the Oregon Department of Corrections.
Okay.
So he'd been in for 37 years, 1969 to 2006 when he died.
He was a record holder, huh?
Yeah, maybe somebody's passed him by now.
I imagine so. Yeah.
In 2006, he had that going for him, but he was dead. So.
But he was dead. Yeah.
And that's the strange and crazy story of Jerry Brudos.
Yeah. Weird guy, man. Weird guy.
That's an understatement of the year. Jerry Brudos, weird guy.
Weird guy.
All right, that's it for this episode of True Crime All the Time. For Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
In the early hours of December 4th, 2024, CEO Brian Thompson stepped out onto the streets of Midtown Manhattan.
This assailant pulls out a weapon and starts firing at him.
We're talking about the CEO of the biggest private health insurance corporation in the world.
And the suspect,
he has been identified as Luigi Nicholas Mangione,
became one of the most divisive figures in modern criminal history.
It was targeted, premeditated, and meant to sow terror.
I'm Jesse Weber, host of Luigi, produced by Law and Crime and Twist. This is more than a true crime investigation. We explore a uniquely American moment that could change the country forever.
He's awoken the people to a true issue.
Finally, maybe this would lead rich and powerful people to acknowledge the barbaric nature of our healthcare system.
Listen to Law and Crime's Luigi exclusively on Wondery Plus. You can join Wondery Plus in the Wondery app, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts.